welcome to another segment of my YouTube channel. I'm so delighted and happy to have Miss Ryesha Higgs as my guest today. Ryesha is a professional dancer. Of course, she's also, has a degree in, I think, medical science. She put it up with me later. And so I'm excited because Ryesha is from the Turks and Caicos Islands. But she is really a world renowned, I would say a world person right now, because she has performed in Japan, performed in UK, and this summer she'll be making a debut in The Lion. What's it called again?
The Lion King.
The Lion King. So I'm excited to have Ryesha to talk about, this wonderful experience that she's going to showcase the world, and also giving Turks and Caicos Islands obviously great credit, because she is from Turks and Caicos. So anything that she does is great for us as well, and it's also great marketing for us, and also great talent, and also give us a great sense of pride, because many times we feel because you're from a small island that that's it. But we can see now, coming from a small island, she is going all over the world showcasing that raw talent that God has given her. Welcome to our show.
Thank you, Drax. Thank you guys for having me. And thank you to the viewers who always tune into your YouTube channel.
Yes. Ryesha, how old were you when you first started dancing?
Oh my. I always get that question asked. And whenever I'm asked, I have to think very far back, right? Because I think I started really as soon as I was born, probably. I think I was born a dancer, really, among many other things. Yeah. But I formally started proper dance training when I was around 5 years old. And that started with a ballet teacher that was in the Providenciales, and her name was Miss Elaine. And she's taught quite a few students, actually, throughout the Turks and Caicos Islands. That's what I started off with, just, of course, dancing around, ballet, more specifically. And then I transitioned on to another teacher, Miss Araduso, who is now opening up a conservatory of dance in Florida. Congratulations to her. Okay. And that's where I really sort of began to become more serious about it. When I began to start taking it seriously, when my schedule began to get super busy. And that continued on until I was about 8, and that was the first sort of time that I then had the opportunity to travel abroad and start dancing abroad. The first opportunity that I had to do that was through the Turks and Caicos Islands Friends of the Arts Association, particularly Barbara and Mark Pankhurst, who are my second parents up to today in my adulthood, and have contributed so much to my own personal growth as a person, and then, of course, secondly, as a dancer. And the first opportunity I had to travel was to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I attended the Pennsylvania Academy of Ballet with, I think it was 14 other girls from the Turks and Caicos Islands. So they took a huge group of us. We had the opportunity to dance there for 2 weeks. And since then, I've kind of traveled to a few different other schools throughout the United States. I went to Colorado, to the Vail Valley Dance Intensive, Saratoga Springs in New York City, as well as I got more mature, I traveled to New York City and danced at a few schools there also. And there have just been so many teachers and schools, especially within the Turks and Caicos Islands, that have also contributed to my growth from the age of 5 all the way up until I graduated high school at 16. Miss Elaine, of course, being the first teacher I ever had, moving on to Miss Araduso, Miss Shara Goldsmith-Bowen, and then, of course, Natasha Lee Bush, and they've all contributed in various ways to my ascension as a dancer.
Awesome, and I also see that you also have done the same, because I remember, I think it's been 2 consecutive summers. You had a training program for a number of students, and my wife and I attended, and we were very impressed to see how much those children learn in a short period of time. And so we thank you for also imparting your knowledge to others as well.
Thank you. Yeah, it really is important to me. Of course, I had the opportunities to travel abroad on multiple occasions and gather experience from other dance schools and gather exposure. And I think that has sort of made me the dancer and also the person that I am today. It's always beneficial to be able to move outside of your home space, especially where we live on an island so small, and to get experience from abroad. Yeah. And thankfully, I've been able to do actually 5 years of the Ryesha Higgs Summer Dance Intensive.
Oh, it's 5 years.
Yeah.
We started off very small. I started off with only about 25 students. Then I moved up to 65 students in Providenciales at any given time. And then the year that I did Grand Turk, I
actually had 76. I will never forget that year in Grand Turk, 76 students. And the continuous support from the community is always incredible, even through the pandemic. You know, people contacting me being like, is dance on this year? Are we going to do it this year?
I know.
And within 2 weeks, those kids, they put on a show.
It was good.
It
awesome.
speaks to all of the talent that we have here and all of the potential that we have here. And it's really a pleasure and, of course, a blessing to be able to see the next generation of dancers move up and just see like how much it does for their wellness, their self-esteem, their confidence. It's great.
So you had like assistants, because that's quite a lot to train those students over a 2-week period.
It is a lot. So I am the dance teacher. So I'm the only dance teacher that teaches those students. But of course I have had assistants from other dancers who are from the Turks and Caicos Islands. So I've had Mr. Dion Pratt, who's been able to come in and perform, as well as teach some of the students, as well as Trey Robinson has also assisted in some respects. And then there have also been older students that I have who have been there consecutively that are now much older, who have taken on the responsibility of being supervisors. So it's great to kind of shuffle the kids out and end up enabling them to take on leadership roles in that sort of space.
Now, dancing, I know a lot of people sometimes will say, oh, you know, a lot of people look at different. I know for you also have a degree in health science? Biomedical science. But there are people who are full-time into dancing.
Yeah.
And, you know, parents are watching this and they might discourage their children. They may say, you're not going to make any money from it. Mm-hmm. But what do you say to parents whose children want to, you know, take on professional dancing as their career?
Well, I think it's of course a difficult, I guess, discussion to have, but we need to normalize, you know, supporting children that want to pursue careers in performing arts or any sort of creative outlet that perhaps is not the traditional mechanism of the way we think of professionalism. I think the important thing to do is to realize the importance of a dream, especially in a child. And I've realized that a lot more having taught children as well. You know, the importance of the dream and being able to enable and foster and support the dream that the child has. Because whilst you may think that it might not be lucrative or maybe the skill isn't there at the outset, more and more we're seeing across the world where people have made professionals out of themselves in any field. Thankfully, my parents, and most especially my mom, Rose Higgs, who I also call my manager sometimes, were very supportive. I mean, she would drop me off to dance. At one point, I was doing voice lessons. I was doing piano. I literally did just about everything creative.
Oh, wow.
But in addition to that, the fact that I had support from parents and, you know, attendance at shows, it also supported my drive to do well academically. See, I think what people sort of miss or take for granted is how creative arts, performing arts, also supports a child academically. Having some sort of outlet really helps you to get through certain stressors. It also sort of fosters your brain activity to enable you to do better in school. And so for me, that is what works. So I would tell parents, support the child. Of course, you know, be realistic, do your research. Because sometimes we're fearful just because we lack the knowledge. And if we educate ourselves in certain respects, sometimes we see that things are normal, things are okay, and they might actually work out. You never know.
Yeah. Now, you also went to school in New York to am I correct?
Yes, I did.
Tell us about that experience.
Yes. So I moved from the Turks and Caicos when I was 16 years old. I don't know how I ended up moving over to New York City, the huge, one of the largest cities in all of America, from the Turks and Caicos Islands.
In the world.
Oh yeah, from a place where you know everyone if you go in the store to somewhere where I knew almost no one. And I moved there firstly to pursue a study pursue study in an independent study program in dance at the Albany American
Dance Theater. And that is the Ailey School, which is the school side of the Albany American Dance Theater, is one of the most renowned modern dance companies and schools in all of the United States. So the process of auditioning and making it into that school was really something that, looking back, I'm incredibly proud of, and I think kind of really started me off into becoming a professional dancer. So I moved there and I pursued the independent study program,
and I completed that in a year. And then I ended up transitioning on to a school called Dance Theater of Harlem, which is a
ballet school. So it's more classical style, classical ballet. And it's meant to support and encourage classical ballet styles throughout, minority communities. So supporting and normalizing dancers from Caribbean
backgrounds, Latin American backgrounds. And so I completed that. And then I decided at a certain point that I would also like to pursue furthering my education. And I started off doing that at Long Island University, Brooklyn. And I pursued a bachelor's degree in biology before I transferred on to move to the UK.
Okay. And that's when you studied
biomedical sciences.
Where did you study in the UK?
King's College London.
And while you were in the UK, I'm assuming you also did dancing.
Yes.
So tell us about that experience in the UK.
Yep.
Because we're going to talk about the main thing after this.
Yeah,
as well.
definitely. So I think one thing that's worth mentioning is, and I guess this is more guidance for students, is that one of the most important things, especially when you're moving into, you want to pursue a career or a degree in performing arts or anything creative, you still need to make sure that you succeed academically and that you still dedicate yourself and focus on your studies. So whilst I initially in New York, when I pursued the first years of my bachelor's, I also attended Dance Theater of Harlem at the same time.
Got it.
So I would get off of school, take the train an hour away, go do all my dance, take the train an hour back home, fall asleep at like 11 o'clock, wake up and do it all the next day.
Wow.
And so then when I moved to the UK and I started at King's College London, my degree, of course, it's a very competitive school. It's research-based. So it began to become very difficult, but I still sort of tried to keep consistent with dancing as well. And I would go to classes after school and then, of course, come back home. And at a certain point, I think it was in my last year of my studies, that's when my dance career really started to kick off for me. I started to get a lot of jobs. I was on Strictly Come Dancing with Adam Lambert, which is almost like the UK's version of Dancing with the Stars. So I did that.
And how did you get to get on that?
So basically, it's mainly networking. And I always stress the importance of networking and having a responsible presence on social settings, in social spaces, online. So, I connected with a few teachers that lived in the UK just by going to their classes, being consistent and going to their classes routinely. And then I had an agency that was interested in me that kind of watched me throughout the times that I attended classes, and then also watched my social media. And I actually got that job through being recommended by a teacher. So the agent reached out to the teacher and asked, provided them with the brief and said, this is the job and this is what we're sort of looking for. Who would you recommend? And I was one of the 5 girls that they recommended for that job.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that was my first professional on stage presence was on Strictly Come Dancing. And then I ended up auditioning for the MTV European Music Awards in 2019. And that was going to be in Sevilla, which is a small town off the coast of Spain. So it's in Spain, a smaller island. And that audition, I always talk about that because it was over 1,000 of us. That was the largest. Yeah, that was the largest audition that they had ever had at that time for the MTV European Music Awards. It was certainly the largest audition I had ever been to. There was a line all the way wrapped around the building, literally wrapped around the building. It was pouring rain outside, so I had to walk with my umbrella. You had to fight to get inside.
So you were determined.
My number was like 600 and something.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot of us. A lot of us in that room. It was pre-COVID, of course, so we were all cramped up next to each other. And we were there for so long that afternoon. And then they did cuts, of course, and determined who would come back. And by the end, it was probably like 500 or so. And so I made it past that cut, and I was called and told that I made the job. So I traveled to Spain in November of 2019 after all of the rehearsals that we did in London, and I was able to perform with two artists. It was Dua Lipa was one, and then Akon, which is like I grew up listening to Akon,
know, right?
So it was really cool. Meeting him and seeing him, I was like, wow,
Awesome.
I knew you when I used to listen to your music when I was a kid. So it was really a humbling experience. The first time I've ever traveled for dance in that way. And then as a result of performing in Spain, I was also booked on a job in Japan. So I was able to travel to Japan.
So the
after
same
Spain.
agency contacted you?
So basically what happened is each artist had their own choreographer.
Oh, gotcha.
And the choreographer for Dua Lipa sort of picked us whilst we were in Spain. So she chose who she wanted to then travel with Dua to Japan. And I was one of the set that traveled with her.
That's awesome.
Japan was the first time that I performed in front of such a large audience. It was 50,000 people
Really?
in the audience. Yes. At that was the Asian Met Music Award. So it was for all of Asia. So Japan, China, Vietnam, Thailand, everywhere was in that one sort of building. Yep.
That is incredible. And now tell us about the main event.
The main event.
That you'll be leaving us soon.
Yes. So now I am transitioning on to perform in The Lion King. So I'll be making my debut on London's West End, which is, if you, the audience, or you Drex, are familiar with Broadway in New York, it's the exact equivalent of Broadway, just in the UK. So it's in London, right in the middle of the city. It is the largest show on the West End, largest, and I would like to say most popular show that's on the West End, a huge production that has so many moving parts behind it. And I'm really grateful and excited to be a part of the show. It's going to be really great.
So how did you get that part?
So that was quite a journey also, and I think it's going to shock quite a few people when I say that I auditioned for The Lion King West End in 2019.
Oh, yes, yeah.
So I auditioned for The Lion King West End in December of 2019, right after coming back from Spain.
Okay.
And it was an audition which was about 5 days on and off long. So it started initially with an open call. I didn't have an agent at that point, so I wasn't able to make the special call for people that already had agencies and had been submitted and accepted. So I initially started off with an open call, about 500 people. I made it past the end of that day and was asked to come back the second day. And that's when I met a whole new set of people who were coming in for the first time. So I was tired from the day before, and I had to do it all over again the very next day, which is fine. That's show business sometimes.
True.
So I did it all again the next day, and then I made it past the last cut as well. By the end of that day, I think we ended up with about maybe 50 of us after the 500 the day before.
Wow.
And after that, it was, I think, 6 of us, 3 boys and 3 girls that made it past the next day. And then we moved into singing. So we also have to sing in the show. So we had to do a singing audition.
So wait a minute. So you were in the top 6 out of the 500?
Yes, out of the 500, I was in the top 6.
That's incredible.
Yep. And shockingly, in dance, you have very large auditions for a very small ratio of parts. So, for example, for The Lion King that year, 2019, we were re-auditioning for, dancers who would be leaving, and we would be taking on the new roles. So they had 2 roles that were being auditioned for, despite the fact that there was a call of 500. So 2 female roles, sorry. And then there were additional male roles, and there was an additional role for an understudy for the main character. So the odds were against just about everyone.
Yeah, very, very
there is that
small.
They weren't looking for many people, but many people showed up. And so we moved into singing auditions, and we moved past that. And then I received a call that we would have the finals. At that time, I was actually in Japan. And like I mentioned, I was in the last year of my studies. So whilst I was in Japan, I was actually finishing up my dissertation. So it was a stressful time. It was an exhausted time. I hardly slept during the Japan trip because whilst everyone was sleeping on the plane, I was up typing on my computer trying to get my dissertation sent in. And my final for The Lion King was the next day, early the next morning after I returned from Japan. And I returned from Japan to the UK at like 10 o'clock at night. It was a 12-hour flight from Nagoya, Japan, which is another city, in Japan, to Tokyo, from Tokyo to the UK, which was 12 hours. And then we had a time difference of 7 hours, so the jet lag was absolutely incredible. But the adrenaline, it got me through because I had to audition the very next morning, first thing the next morning. And so I did that, danced again, sung again. It was very, very long and very exhausting, but I made it through that as well. And then I got a call telling me that I was a part of the show.
That is awesome. I mean, congratulations.
Thank you.
I mean, I am so proud. The entire Turks and Caicos is proud. Even if they didn't tell you that.
Thank you.
And the world is going to even be prouder once they see what you have offered them. I'm really excited to see how far you've come with your career. You're determined. You didn't give up. I mean, despite the intense periods. You still did it. That's incredible.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. I really do.
No one else from Turks and Caicos can say they've done what you're doing.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think what I'm trying to do, of course, I do these things for me, and I do it because I love to dance, and I'm passionate about what I do. But at the same time, it's also trying to normalize this sort of life for any other child that wants to grow up and do the same thing.
That's it.
So I think representation matters quite a lot, and to be able to have someone from the Turks and Caicos Islands, a small island in the Caribbean, who's made it to the West End is really something great. And I always tell people that, I have grown up and lived here, of course, my entire life until I was 16 when I moved away. But of course, I was born in the U.S. So when we had to fill out our cast member sheet, we had to put down our information, which was going to be in the program. And they asked place of birth. And I said, well, okay. And I called my mommy about it, and she's a true patriot.
She is.
So she was like, I said, well, mommy, and so am I. So I said, mommy, they've asked for place of birth, and I don't want to lie, but Turks and Caicos needs to be in the program. That's what needs to be in the program. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell them, okay, this is my place of birth, but I need you to say, of course, I'm also a Turks and Caicos Islander. I'm also a citizen. So I said, but if you're going to put this information for all media purposes, please put that my hometown is the Turks and Caicos Islands.
You know what? I noticed on the program I saw a place of birth. She was born, but I said, but I don't care. Turks and Caicos is mentioned.
I said, well,
I noticed that.
No. This has got to say Providenciales, Turks and Caicos. She was like, yeah, Ryesha, you got to tell them. So hey, there we go. Like for me to have that's the biggest thing for me is that someone somewhere in the audience is going to open up the program and look through all of the people and be like, whoa, this person from Turks and Caicos Islands. Then when they look up the place and see how small it is, it's such a big accomplishment to have someone from our population to be on the West End, of course.
Well, thank you for doing that. And thank you. And I know your mom and your dad has instilled that patriotism in you, so thank you so much.
Yes,
for doing that.
Yeah, I had to. It could have gone no other way for me. It was no decision at all.
Yeah. Well, I just want to thank you again for being on this YouTube channel.
Thank you.
I love this interview. I think it will bring a lot of hope and inspiration for so many people, young people, parents, the world. And I'm excited to, hopefully some of us who are in the United Kingdom will get to go and watch the show. How long is the show?
The show is running for the full year. So from July 29th, until July of 2022. Every day, except for Mondays.
Are you serious?
8 shows a week. There are 7 days in a week, and there's a show, eight shows a week. We have 2 shows on a Wednesday, 2 shows on a Saturday, and we're closed on a Monday. So really, anyone can make up in their mind that they're going to come, and you just let me know when you're coming, and I'll be there.
That is awesome. I mean,
I'll be there.
Turks and Caicos and the world. I'm introducing to Ryesha Higgs. She's simply the best.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jax. Thank you guys for viewing.
Thank you. Remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel.